All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Destination the Show. This is episode 37. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined as always by Jeremy Nygaard. Jeremy, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm good. It feels different now that I was here when we started recording, as opposed to last week when I
Yeah,
jumped in
that's true.
10 minutes later and had no idea what was going on. So no, things are good. Things are good. The Wolves are good. The Twins won. Um,
Finally.
yeah, how are you doing over on the East Coast?
Last trip of the year to Pennsylvania for me, and I'm very excited not to be doing this again until the fall. So that is good news. The Twins remain a very frustrating team to watch and enjoy. So we should talk about the Timberwolves real quick before we jump into all the things, man, because we exchanged texts on Sunday night, and I let you know that I ran screaming down my street when they finally iced a win over the Nuggets. But I got to ask you, because you're the biggest diehard of all Wolves diehards, I feel like. Did you see it happening when they were down 20?
I was less optimistic than I had been at other times in the series. But the thing of that whole thing was, like, Murray was hitting shots that he's not going to hit,
Cannot
right?
stand that, man.
Jokic is going to be Jokic. Like, he might get
Mhm.
4 and 20, and the reality with the rest of the Nuggets is, and I said this during the game to my kids, Michael Porter has been trash. Aaron Gordon is, aside from his times where he goes otherworldly, is very mediocre.
Mhm.
The Nuggets bench as a whole is not very good, and so there was always going to be an opportunity if the Wolves defense stepped up, which they did, and the adjustments that were made, like with Edwards going on to Murray as the primary defender,
Mhm.
uh, that was a really big deal. And the part that's crazy is that they did it without Ant, but like going full Ant mode. I did get a text from one of my buddies the night before the game, and he said, "What's going to be the storyline?"
Mhm.
And I responded, I said, Wolves are going to win, and the storyline is going to be Cat plays the game of his life.
Wow.
I don't think he necessarily played the game of his life, but Cat, when he's not whiny and acts like a mature human being, is not the unicorn that some guys are. But when you're
Mhm.
a big 7 footer who can bang with the centers in the NBA and then step out and shoot threes at a really high clip
Yeah.
and be a excellent free throw shooter. There's so many reasons to not like Cat if you watch him a ton, but when he plays his game, it's really easy to like having him on your team. The other thing that I think is important, Ant says all the right things all the time,
Mhm.
which as a 22-year-old, okay, let me go back on that. Ant doesn't say all the right things all the time. We've had some examples of things that he said on social media and stuff like that. But when he's at press conference or when he's on the mic, he's always saying things to help his teammates be more confident,
Mhm.
right? I'm always going to hit the open guy because I believe he can make the shot. Michael Jordan would never say that, right? Kobe would never say that.
Mhm.
But to be a leader like that, and even if he doesn't believe it, the guys think that he believes it. And
Mhm.
so McDaniels is going to take that shot. Nas going to take that shot. Nas going to take that shot. It doesn't matter what he says about Mike Conley because Mike Conley's 37 years old and understands how basketball works. But I think all of those things help get to the point, or to help drive the point that Ant knows that he needs his whole team to win these games. And I'm curious to see how, because he just said, what about the Mavericks? Well, I'm going to guard Kyrie. Like, that's just
Yep.
his idea, which I think makes sense. You'll put McDaniels on Doncic on the point of attack and just kind of let him do his thing. I'm a little, I'm not going to say concerned, but I'm curious to see how the Wolves keep the super athletic young bigs off the offensive glass, because I think Derek Lively and the Gafford guy are kind of unique in how they play. I said before the calendar turned to May, though, it's going to be Wolves over Mavs in 5 in the Western Conference Finals, and Wolves over Celtics in 7. So I'm going to stick to that. But long answer longer. Yeah, I was losing a little bit of confidence when it was 20 in the third quarter.
Yeah, for sure. And to your point about Kent, man, I feel like I just was so impressed by like the level of poise, like the decision making, like to guard Jokic credibly, stay just about out of foul trouble, be efficient offensively, all of those things. I felt like he really helped keep them in the game when things were getting a little dicey.
Yep.
And last thing on the Wolves before we jump into some baseball chat, I'm interested in this Mavs series also because I could be wrong, but I think I'm right in saying that Timberwolves won 3 out of 4 in the regular season, but none of those were after the trade deadline. Excuse me, when the Mavs got a ton better, and I think they were without Doncic and Kyrie for at least 2 of those 4 games, and the only one which the both of them played, the Mavs won. So interested in that matchup. I like your prediction. Can't wait, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun, and I find it to be a unique thing where the team that's winning these series, even though Ant's been great, Ant would never say, and the talking heads would never say that the Wolves have the best player on the floor, right? Kevin Durant getting older, I think, was still getting the credit for being the best player in that series. Jokic was getting the credit for being the best player in that series. Luka's going to be considered the best player in this series, and it's going to come down to defense, right? It's going to come down to how the Wolves defend those guards, and if PJ Washington is playing like an all-star, that's going to make things harder. But I don't think the Mavericks are a better team than the Nuggets. I think they're maybe a little bit deeper. But it is going to be fun. And the KG saying he's going to show up for a game.
I saw that.
He didn't say he's going to show up to Minnesota.
That would be electric, though.
I'm hoping that he shows up in game 1 because I will be at game 1. And then I'll be busy for game 2, which is going to be a bummer if he's there and I don't see it. But yeah, Target Center last Thursday night was electric. I don't know that it was louder than the beginning of game 3. But I think game 3 was more the party atmosphere because it was going to be sweep. And this was like the Wolves got to win this game, and they did it by 45. How freaking cool is that? But no, it'll be a lot of fun. But we can move on from that and talk baseball.
All right. Well, we're going to continue to do a little Wolves chat because this is a magical run and it's super fun, and you should be enjoying it because the runs like this do not come along often. But I am excited, Jeremy, to talk baseball with you. I feel like we haven't really done that in a minute. We've been really guest heavy recently, right? We had Sean Johnson on, we had Joe Doyle on, we had Ezra Wise on. Great, awesome guests, but we have not had much of a chance to just chat prospects, talk about the draft, and all that good stuff. So we're actually gonna dig into some minor league updates, if that sounds good to you. So, all right, man. So I pulled out some notable prospects from each of the orgs that we talk about the most, and I'm gonna hit you with some questions because I want to get your reactions to their kind of openings of the season. Tons of intriguing prospects to follow. Plenty of guys to provide updates on. A good amount of them from the 2023 draft class for all of these teams. So we'll just go alphabetical. So I want to start with the Brewers. I feel like this is maybe the Brewers prospect that you and I have talked about the most, right? Cooper Pratt, unexpected later round signing, way over slot. So he's been at low A. Current lines 233, 374, slugging just 337. So that's good for a 711 OPS with just one home run. 17% of the time, which is great. Striking out 25% of the time. Okay. So here's my question for you, man. Any concern on your end over like the lack of extra base hits for Cooper Pratt, a 19-year-old in low A, or fair to say he's just getting his feet wet?
Yeah, I'm not going to be overly concerned by anything. I don't think, like I said to Theo off air before we get to June, right? Whether it's a team, whether it's a player, um, the weather by June 1st should be good. Not that Carolina's probably getting the late winter and stuff like that, but the other thing that I try to remember, and I don't know if it's even something that necessarily matters because it's not just hitters that face, but pitchers too, is getting rid of that one level um, a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Cooper Pratt wouldn't be at low A right now if that still exists. Cooper Pratt probably would just be starting his season in a rookie league,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so the thing that I look at first is whenever I look at stats of minor league guys is typically their walk to strikeout ratio. And
Mm-hmm.
so 29 strikeouts in 89 at bats, not super alarming, right? Especially in this day and age. But 18 walks gives you some idea that he has an idea what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Only 6 extra base hits out of his 21. But again, that's on 21 hits. So he has a game where he hits a couple doubles, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, now slugging's gone up. I don't know how he's playing defensively. I haven't looked at even where he's necessarily playing defensively. But
Mm-hmm.
if he takes a full year to figure out low A and then comes back next year at low A, I mean that's when I'd maybe start to watch. It's like, okay, if you've gotten a full season plus and still not getting it done,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's a time to be like, okay, what do we got here? But I'm certainly not getting alarmed before June 1st. I'm probably not even thinking about how his year's gone until the 4th of July, to be honest.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm not overly alarmed by Cooper Pratt's slow start that hasn't involved a lot of power.
For sure. And I'm glad we started there because I think that's a good baseline, right, to set for the rest of the guys that we might talk about, especially in the lower levels where, like, I don't know if you agree with this, Jeremy, but I feel like the general level of expectation, but on prospects that are like of a high caliber, of which Cooper Pratt was one, even though he was drafted in kind of the mid rounds, the expectations, like some fans, but on prospects like that are completely unreasonable, right? Like exactly
100%.
what you said. Like if he's in low A for a whole year and he's starting to figure out by the end of the season, you would, I think, consider that a win if he remains healthy, starts to make gains in the areas that you want him to, right?
Yep, for sure.
Okay, let's run through a couple more guys on the Brewers, and then I got another guy I want to ask you about. So, other notables, Brock Wilken, unfortunately, has been limited to 17 games. He got hit in the face by a pitch, had a facial fracture. He is back playing now, which is good to see at AA. Josh Noth, who I'm always going to mess this up. He either went a pick before Charlie Soto or a pick after. He's off to a solid start, 4.50 ERA, 3.07 FIP. Striking out 27% of hitters, walking too many, 15% last time I checked, but the control has looked significantly better in May. All right, Jeremy, here's a guy I want to ask you about. Jacob Mizorowski. I feel like we've checked in on him a good amount on our time doing this show. So he's a AA, 2.32 ERA, 3.03 FIP, striking out 34% of hitters. But his walk rate is almost 20%, and he's throwing 57.5% strikes. For context, like the major league average is about 64%. Do you think this is, at this point, like, is he ever going to figure out the strike throwing enough to become a starter? Just curious for your thoughts on Mizorowski.
I think when you have questions like that to open the season, like it's fair to ask those questions early in the season,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it was the opposite way where it's like, yeah, he's got good command, and then he starts a year like he has, okay, maybe he'll turn it around. But as a guy moves up, you just start to wonder if that's who he is. He's not giving up any hits, right? His batting average against is like 125.
Yep.
But his last game in three and two thirds, 3 strikeouts, 5 Ks, right? He did have a stretch, I think that must be late April, where he pitched 8 innings and walked 2 and struck out 13. But since then, it's been 12 walks, 16 strikeouts, in 12-ish innings. And I think you're going to continue to run him out as a starter,
For sure.
right? And if the Brewers are in contention in the fall, then maybe you add him to the bullpen, and that'd be an okay thing to do because you can limit his innings over the course of the year. But man, he's walked 25 already this year. He's walked 42 and 71 innings last year. He's at 25 and 31 innings. That's something you got to figure out. But being a Twins fan, we've seen how Duran kind of went through that same deal as a starter, or as a starter in the minor leagues, and became a lights out closer. So, if the expectation is he needs to be a front of the rotation starter, I think maybe there could be some concern. But if the concern is that he's going to be a contributor, I wouldn't jump to that conclusion yet. I think he's still going to be a very sought after, prized prospect. It would just be really nice if he could reduce that walk rate a little bit, because that'll be a killer, right?
That'll be a killer for sure. One other guy I wanted to mention just in passing, and then one last Brewers guy I want to just mention because I know we both think very highly of him. Bradley Blaylock, we have talked about quite a bit on our I want to say our like system top 30s or whatever. He was just recalled by the Major League team straight from Double A. So excited for him, a guy we've talked about a little bit. How about this for a standout though? Bishop Letson, 19 at low A, 3.38 ERA, 3.09 xFIP, striking out 35% of hitters. Walking a few too many, but he's throwing a good amount of strikes. He is among the leaders in all of minor league baseball in limiting contact of any kind. Hitters just are not getting bat to ball on his pitches, and I feel like in a few years we might be looking back on that late round prep pick from the Midwest that not enough people were paying attention to and saying the Brewers did it again.
Yeah, he's been really good. And he's got that starter, like he's 6'4", 170, or that's what he's listed on as MLB. So there's going to be significant, I'm not going to say growth, but opportunity to grow. Significant chance to reach a ceiling that's high. And I think, pulling off the Pratt signing, that was impressive. You had Letson in, I think it was round 11. That's a really good draft we thought they had. That's if you get a high school pitcher after round 10 that becomes a dude, that's super impressive. So yeah, 16 innings pitched, 23 strikeouts. Like you mentioned, 10 walks is too many. He's given up 3 home runs. But yeah, love to have guys like that in your system if you're a fan of the team.
For sure. Promising. Okay, let's move on, talk a little bit about the Cubs. I feel like the headliner here, a guy that I feel like you maybe gave this guy a shout out for a potential rookie of the year, dark horse, Cade Horton. Fairly recently promoted to AAA, 386 FIP, striking out 27% of hitters in AAA. 9.3% walk rate is pretty solid. On the doorstep of the majors, he could be with a major league team any day, right? Like he's an injury away, I feel like at this point.
Yeah, so three starts right now in AAA. 4 walks and 4 innings in his first start, 4 walks and 3 innings in his second start. Struck out more guys in those starts, and then a walk in 5 innings. He's given up 11 earned runs right now in 12 innings. So yeah, he's at the doorstep, but I think there's probably less of an urgency. They've had
For sure.
some their one free agent signing showed off that he's pretty good. What's Magana's or what's his ERA right now?
Like 0.87 after like 8 turns through the rotation or
Yeah.
whatever. It's
So
ridiculous.
I think the need for Horton to come up is less, and you can give him as much time in AAA as you'd like. Um, 28 innings this year after 88 last year, but yeah, he's got the potential to be an impact pitcher. Was he like the number 2 rated right-handed pitching prospect in all of baseball behind Skeens or
I
close to
think
that?
Jackson Job was number 2 on most lists, and then Horton was 3. But I
Yes.
think maybe on Pipeline he was. I'm not sure, but certainly like top 3, 4.
Yep. So you're talking top of the rotation potential, um, and good on the Cubs for promoting him at 22 years old and being on the doorstep. And I think once he goes through a couple times and understands the difference between Double A and Triple A, he adjusts very quickly, and he's going to be a really good pitcher for a really storied franchise.
Yeah, for sure. You didn't like that pick, right? Or did you? I mean, we weren't doing this show at that point, but I was just like one of
I
the haters of that pick, and I could not have been more wrong.
I was surprised by the pick.
Mm,
I I thought Horton would be a really good pick for someone in the late teens.
right.
Um, I did not foresee him going 7. I'm glad he went 7 as a Twins fan. That pushed Brooks Lee down, which I did not see that happening. But his run collegiately to end the College World Series year really kind of put him high up on boards for some people. And again, good for the Cubs for recognizing that as a two-way guy. He hadn't thrown a whole lot, so there just wasn't a lot to know. But they saw something they liked, uh, and pulled the trigger against what many teams probably thought was the right thing, or at least the talking heads. And
Yep,
yeah, he's doing great. So yeah, limit the walks and it. The hard part, and we've talked about this with other people. We don't really know what the directive is, right, from the front office or the coaching
for sure.
staff, where it's like, hey, you're great, but we need you to do this. We don't care what the results are, right?
Right.
If you give up a home run, but we need you to throw this pitch every however many pitches.
Mm-hmm.
And we just get so hung up on statistics
For sure.
where that's not necessarily the narrative that the team is following. So I think that could always factor in things, and we would certainly never know.
For sure. And producer Theo confirms Horton is 3rd behind Skeens and Job on Pipeline. So not bad for a draft pick just a couple of years ago. All right, Jeremy, let me give you a couple more Cub updates, and then I'm going to ask you about one of your guys. Jefferson Rojas, a prospect who's becoming more and more significant, is starting to sneak into top 100s here and there. He doesn't walk and he doesn't strike out, but he has a contact rate north of 80%. At South Bend as a 19-year-old. That feels incredibly promising.
Mm-hmm.
My guy, Kevin Alcantara, has had a really disappointing start. 228, 279, 354, not really walking, striking out a lot. Hope he's going to turn it around. But I wanted to ask you also about Matt Shaw. I think a mutual favorite of ours, right? Are like, if the Twins had gone under slot, here's who we wish they would have taken. An odd line for Shaw at Double A so far. 208, 344, 328. So getting on base plenty, not getting much in the way of kind of power or impact that we'd seen him deliver when he debuted last year. He's walking plenty, 16% of the time. Contact rate's really good, really healthy. He does have a 256 BABIP, so I'm wondering if there's some batted ball luck at play. But he's also a guy that I think both of us have conviction that it is potentially going to debut this year. So, does anything about this start or any of the numbers you see here for Shaw worry you about his trajectory and his kind of impacts moving forwards?
Yeah, I don't know that worry is the right word. He's now played. Well, he played 15 games at Double A last year, so small sample. But in those
Hmm.
15 games, he had 19 hits, um, and 10 runs, 3 home runs, and twice as many at bats, over twice as many games. He's had the same amount of home runs, less extra base hits total, right? So just hit for far less power. But like you mentioned, he's been walking a ton, 24 walks. So twice as many runs, um, almost twice as many stolen bases. I, I think it's obviously too early to have any concerns, but too early in his career to really make anything of it. He got off to a blazing hot start, right? Last
Hmm.
year through 3 levels, OPS north of 1,000, had 8 home runs and 157 at bats, 15 stolen bases. He was playing at a level below him, and now he's probably, you have that confidence, you build that up, you play at a level that maybe is the right level, but confidence in baseball, that mental aspect is huge.
Hmm.
And he probably spent the off season thinking, like anybody would, like I'll take care of Double A like I was taking care of it last year and quickly get promoted. And that's not always how it works. And then the ball starts to roll the wrong direction, and you got to make some adjustments and figure it out. And I mean, still, if you would have taken anybody out of last year's draft and said after, what does he have? 76 games, almost 300 bats, 294, 865 OPS,
For sure.
33 walks, 60 strikeouts. You'd say, yeah, you take that 25 stolen bases, 11 home runs. You would take that professional start. Um, so I think that's fine. But again, give it some time because he played a full college season before shifting over, and now he's coming off of a spring training and now playing every day.
Hmm.
Really, for the first extended time of his life, um, there's going to be some growth um, opportunities. And again, like I said with Horton, we don't know what the front office is asking Matt Shaw to be, or what
Hmm.
Matt Shaw to do. Like, we want you to try this, we want you to make this adjustment. Um, I think that he'll be just fine. Um, and if not, the Cubs have a ton of other options. So,
Sure do.
um, yeah, it's something to watch, something to monitor. Double A, 1 year out, less than a year from being drafted is a pretty impressive role coming from the Big Ten. So we're not even talking about
Good call.
the best college conference in baseball. Um,
Not even talking about a top four, probably.
and you never know with health either, right? There can be a
Hmm.
nagging anything that any of these guys could be dealing with, and learning how to play with it, play every day, and try to recover and also get better. But yeah, though, like I said, the first thing I look at, walks and strikeouts. 24 walks, 35 strikeouts in 38 games.
Hmm.
I'll take that from anybody. So um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this next month goes, and if the trajectory, if he can turn it around. He has not. He's what, 237. Yeah, no power over the last 10 games. One extra base hit. So um, yeah, let's see what happens before we get down on the guy.
Right on. Okay, Jeremy, let's talk Twins. If I told you before the season started that Walker Jenkins and Brooks Lee would have one combined at bat on May 21st, your reaction would be what?
Sounds like the Twins' luck,
Stop.
right? I
Brutal,
mean,
brutal.
no, I mean it's a bummer because those were the two, really the two big names.
Hmm.
And how quickly was Brooks Lee going to force his promotion to the Twins, right?
Hmm.
And how quickly is Walker Jenkins going to climb the organizational ladder? It's going to be fast. Like, those were probably the two most talked about topics in all of Twins minor league of all the Twins minor league subjects. And Royce Lewis round second, and oh my gosh, what's wrong with him? Oh, call up Brooks Lee. Brooks Lee's got this knee thing, says Theo, standing next to me at whatever brewery we're at, and then it was either shortly after that or shortly Forgotten Star. Thank you, Forgotten Star. Forgot about that one, and and then Walker Jenkins is got something minor that is going to not take long to recover from, and now we're almost to Memorial Day, and he's just back. But what's the good news on both these guys, Jamie?
That they're both on rehab assignments with the FCL Twins. So both played yesterday. Brooks Lee played again today. I guess is they're just being more aggressive with Brooks Lee because they could use a bat and want to kind of move him more quickly along. But it's such welcome news, man. I mean, the Twins' offense at the major league level has been so unbelievably up and down. Theo tells us that Lee is 1 for 8 in 2 games so far. I think he led off with a double maybe today. But yeah, the Twins' offense has been so up and down. They could sure use a reliable hitter. Bonus that it's a switch hitter, right? A guy who can bat from both sides. I have pretty much zero doubts that Brooks Lee would be up at the major league level right now if he had been healthy and performed with any sort of consistency at the beginning of the season. No?
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly be in that time range, right? Didn't Royce Lewis debut around this time, 2 years ago, right? Yeah, and I wonder, and I don't have these stats. I don't even know if they're available. 1 for 8 in 2 games. How many pitches has he seen? Because you don't see a lot of pitches. It might be a lot of just trying to get timing back and standing,
sure.
maybe taking some pitches that you wouldn't take just to see, a few more pitches in this at bat or that at bat. We don't know. He struck out 1 time, so that means he's put six balls in play that were resulted in outs. Were they hard hit balls? Were they weak grounders? All of those things are these are all stats without context, and I think. I'm curious to see how much or how long he's down there. Or does he play every day and gets immediately promoted to St. Paul? Does he play for the FCL Twins for a week, get some at-bats for Fort Myers, move up to Cedar Rapids? Like what's the step up to getting there? So that's the part that I'm kind of curious about. Getting back-to-back days in rehab suggests that he's going to play more and be promoted quicker. So I would guess he goes straight to St. Paul, right? Wouldn't that make the most sense?
I'm gonna say maybe a few games for the miracle. For the Mighty Muscles.
We can call it the Miracle. The Miracle's better, but we can just stick with that.
I'm gonna say a couple of games at low A, and then like if I was thinking about the last Royce Lewis rehab, right? Kind of out for a longer period of time. I think they did that where he played a couple of games in Fort Myers, just closer to the Twins facilities, and then he got transferred to Wichita for a couple of games. Just slowly ramping up the competition. And I'm sure who's playing where in the country, who's at home, and all of that will factor into that. But I'm sure they will give Lee plenty of time because, as you say, he's barely swung a bat or done anything since spring training. That's an awfully long time to be out to try and get your timing back and get everything in sync.
And this was it back spasms? Is that
herniated disc?
So there was some more stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and what's I mean, how do you recover from that with what, cortisone or?
No idea. I am the owner of many ailments and injuries, Jeremy, but a cranky, crooked back is fortunately not one of them. So lucky.
I go to the chiropractor all the time, and if the chiropractor can't fix it, then I just deem it not fixable, and that's how I move on in life.
Right on. Well, chiropractors don't actually do anything, so way to support a quack profession.
Come on.
Okay. All right, let's talk about David Festa real quick. Quick shameless plug for a piece on him that I wrote at Twins Daily. It's very dramatically titled "David Festa is a MLB ready top 100 pitching prospect." Um,
I heard.
David David Festa has the highest strikeout rate of any starting pitcher at AAA. Last I checked, I'll give you a nickel if you can tell me who's number two.
No idea.
Cade Povich.
Oh,
Old friend Cade Povich.
who did the Twins get for him again?
Maybe let's not talk about that.
Hey, you know what we should do? Yeah, I love that Theo types it in the box like we're not. If you're bored someday and want to know what I thought about that trade, you should look back at my timeline.
Okay, nice.
And see what I had to say, and then read the replies, and go from there. But okay, so David Festa, since you are the biggest David Festa fan that I know,
I am.
I want to read you his stats because you haven't done that yet.
Okay.
Right? So 34 innings pitched in AAA, 52 strikeouts, 19 walks, 31 hits in nine games started. His second to last start, he struck out 10 over 6 innings, walking 3, and that was his longest outing. Earlier in the season, it looked like he was going around 3 innings. This last start was 4 strikeouts in 4 innings. Allowed 5 home runs. Has hit 1 batter. Has a whip of 147, which is a little higher than I think I would like to see for someone that's putting up the numbers that he's putting up. Batting average against is 246, which is the exact same as it was last year. You probably have a little bit more advanced data to share, though.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't write down a ton of additional advanced numbers. Like, there's a lot of stuff in that piece. There's a couple of things that I would point to. So, one, it does seem like they're stretching him out, right? So, to your point, at the beginning of the season, he was on this kind of 3 or 4, like 3.2 innings per start. I'm sure it was like tied to like a pitch counter or whatever. And then they started, it looked like kind of going in this A-B pattern where it was outing A was like this 3-inning outing. Then outing B was slightly longer each time. So we went through a start where he, on his kind of B start, he did 4 innings, then 5 innings, then 6 innings. And then I think his most recent start was interrupted by weather. But the strike throw, so you raise valid points, right? Strike throwing and control has never been like his greatest strength. Significantly better in his last 4 starts than his first 4. And we're still in the realm of a sample size where that matters. If you have a little bit of a poor stretch at the beginning of the season, he's getting a ton of chase, like 30% chase rate overall, which is really, really good. And then the other 2 things I point to is just like the 2, he's a 3-pitch guy, right? So fastball, slider, changeup. The slider and the changeup command are both significantly better this season than they are, or than they were, last season. If you look in that piece, there's kind of some heat maps of what his slider and changeup location looks like year on year, as well as a breakdown of the outcomes those pitches are getting. And so I'm saying all that to say, I think he's like close to ready. I do anticipate, or I would anticipate, if and when he comes up to debut, some bumps relating to control and command, but stuff-wise and velocity-wise. And this is also a pitcher who has really good extension, something the Twins like to tap into, that will make his velocity play up even a little bit more. He definitely has the stuff to get major league hitters out. And so, to your point, I think it'd be like a relatively high variance guy start to start, right? You might see some clunkers, like three innings pitched, 5 walks and 4 earned runs. But I also think you'll see some kind of dominant stretches. And I think he's getting to a place where his name is in the mix for a spot, whether that's a spot start or contributing the bullpen later in the season. Who knows?
So we've talked about this. I don't believe we talked about this on here though. What's the leash on Simeon Richardson, because if you look at the rotation, that's kind of the part of the rotation that's been in flux, right? So Varland
Hmm.
got his handful of starts after Varland was phenomenal as a bullpen guy, right? The bullpen has not been great, but Varland is still a starter. Woods Richardson comes up, I think has pitched better than people anticipated.
Hmm.
Had I think
Definitely.
his last start though was his last start that wasn't great.
It was either that or the one before,
So he's done enough, I think, to allow himself a couple more starts.
for sure.
But at some point, that's got to be. I mean, aside from injury, at some point that's got to be the spot. But you're not going to promote him to then say, okay, we're going to give you one start because we don't have other options, right? And you
Hmm.
can't send him down to bring Woods Richardson back up. You could send him down to bring Varlin up. Uh, how do you see the three of them? Like, do they just all stay starters and you just rotate through and until guys prove that they can't do it, get sent down? Or
Yeah.
at any point, do you change um, like what Varlin's role is if the bullpen needs him?
Yeah. So Theo put in the chat, SWR's last start was good, 5 1/3, 4 hits, 2 Ks, and no walks. His
Okay.
Toronto start, so the one before was bad. So yeah, I do have some thoughts on that actually. So I do think they're going to keep all three guys starting. I think they'll keep Varland starting. Um, Theo's covered Varland plenty in St. Paul and spoken to him working on his changeup and just like executing that pitch and commanding that pitch, right? So they're working on starter things with Varland, and I don't think there's a reason to move him into the bullpen, even though the bullpen has been a little uneven. Aside from Duran's last couple outings, it's much more been the lower leverage end of the bullpen that's been poor. I think SWR actually has a little bit of a longer leash because of the mid rotation guys. Like Paddock and Joe Ryan in general. Joe Ryan was terrific tonight, and
Mhm.
Paddock has started to put it together in a way that the Twins made a bet on at the beginning of the season, right? They said we're not replacing Sonny Gray. We're gonna count on Bailey Ober being who Bailey Ober is, and Paddock and Joe Ryan taking a small step forwards to kind of cover some of this value. And when you have those three guys all going 5 to 6+ innings per start most of the time, which is what it's been, that takes the pressure off Simeon Woods Richardson and the bullpen because you don't have kind of back to back to back days of needing like 4 or 5 innings out of your pen. So I don't think SWR is in any danger of losing his rotation spot until he throws a few duds in a row, which just hasn't happened yet. And I think the plan would and should be keep all three of those guys starting so you have some depth at the fifth starter position and you can plug in and count on at least one of those guys performing well at any given time. And if you get in a spot with your bullpen where you don't want to trade for another reliever at the deadline, then maybe you can talk about plugging in Varland kind of down the stretch, etc. But I would keep all of them starting. I would, to your point, give Fester as long as possible until he's really consistently dominating in AAA. And I think SWR has beyond earned himself some leeway to start with his performances so far.
Okay.
Got to touch on your guy Erod. His numbers are exactly the same as what they were when we talked about him three weeks ago. Make his contact percentage is like right on the borderline, 65%. He's only swinging at 31% of pitches, which I just don't think you can do as a major league hitter and be successful. You're just gonna strike out looking a whole lot.
Right. We see
And
that with
yet,
Julian, right?
exactly. And yet he has a 1.028 OPS to go along with his almost 30% strikeout rate and his 27% walk rate. What do you make of that? I don't know what to do with that anymore. My head is going to explode with his batting line. It makes no sense to me.
But he's across the board, he's better than last year, right? And so there's something to be said about that because you say your guy, Erod. It's your guy, Erod, and I'm the doubter. His
I'm
batting
trying to
average has
flip
gone up.
us.
His batting average has gone up. His OBP has gone up. His slugging has gone up. His power numbers haven't really gone up as far as home runs go.
What does
I
he
don't
have?
think
6?
he's got
6?
6 right now. So I mean, maybe, but he's doing everything that you want him to do. I just don't know how, like you said, is it sustainable? We asked that last year, right? Is he going to be able to make the jump from high A to double A, which is a huge jump, and behave the way that he's behaved in the batter's box?
Behave the way
And
he's
the
behaved.
and the answer is apparently you can do that, right? And so the more he starts to see double A pitching, because how old is he again? 21 years old.
Something like that.
He's not going to get worse that way, right? And so, like I said, I don't like to make a whole lot of things make before Memorial Day. This is a promising development,
I
right?
agree.
That he's been able to sustain the approach that he's had and have more success at double A up to this point than he had at high A,
Mm-hmm.
which, I mean, he batted 240, but besides that and the ton of strikeouts, it was good enough. And so when the first and second prospect haven't done anything, right? But your third prospect has at least solidified his spot. I think that's huge. And I do think that if there is a need in the outfield, maybe not soon, but tell me about the left-handed hitters that the Twins have in their outfield right now, or have as options,
Mm-hmm.
and then tell me that he's not one of the better options. And I just don't think you can do that without reaching down for a lie somewhere.
2 quick things on him, then we got to move on. I enjoyed your behave the way he behaves comment. I don't think you can behave that way in Major League Baseball and be successful swinging 31% of the time. And so that's like, to me, that's like a really interesting development question. How do you navigate pushing what you know works for a guy at the level they're at currently with pushing them to do something you know will better prepare them for the next level? That's something that's really interesting to me that I would like to ask somebody about next time we have a great guest. And then, I think the last thing I would say on Erod, I want to see him do it for half a season at Double A, given
Yeah,
his
perfect. Yeah.
age. Like, I'd love to see him there until July, August. Then, if he's still crushing it, anything's in play.
I don't like the idea of August because that's like so near the end of the season. But with the draft being later, that just kind of screws timing up, right? You don't have to make a whole lot of adjustments because these guys aren't signed until the end of July, so it makes sense. But I think there's a chance that he pushes this envelope a little bit more. And the whole thing is the decisions that he's making in the batter's box, right? By not swinging. Like, what's the reason for not swinging? And those are just answers to questions that we won't have answers to. Is it going to be as simple as when he gets in the big league batter's box, it's not the same? Or is it, I don't know. It's a very interesting topic to debate because it's such a unique approach.
Yep.
But the fact that he's batting 262 and OPSing at 1028, that's promising.
That is promising for sure. Let's knock out a couple more quickly. Just some honorable mentions here. Yunior Severino, a AAA, led all of minor league baseball in home runs last year. 554 OPS. Yikes. Shout out to Theo for that one because that one was not on my radar. Charlie Soto, I just want to mention, very start to start, up and down. Let's just like normalize that. A 18-year-old, I believe he is the youngest prospect in the entire Florida State League. Some starts are really great and some starts are not so great.
Like his last one.
His last one was not so great. I don't think he made it out the first inning.
He didn't, and he has. So that was 7 days ago, and that's the long. Well, I guess. I mean, maybe he started today.
They pulled some guys up from the complex league to Fort Myers. So they've been shuffling things a little bit. Yes, what's his name? Spencer Bangard started today, who's like really promising. But I just want to say on Soto, like this is exactly what I expected it to look like. He's shown flashes of the stuff. The velocity is great. Working on new pitches, the performance metrics, the ERA, all of that stuff should not matter to you at all.
Right.
Just my 2 cents.
And even if he's underwhelming this year, I think he's going to start next year at Fort Myers again.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to Cedar Rapids, you get to high as a 19-year-old. Like it's hard not to like that. He's so big too, like 6'3", 210.
Oh, he's way taller than 6'3". I think he's like 6'5", 6'6" now.
There's just a lot of developing that has to go in with someone that's relatively raw. So
For sure.
yeah, nothing really to worry about, but always something to monitor just because it's like, ooh, 2 outs, 5 runs, not great.
Yep.
So okay, well let's talk about that Knicks name on your. Oh, you skipped him. Why'd you skip him?
I skipped him because I wanted to come back to those last 3 guys and quickly knock him out.
Okay. I feel like this guy deserves more than just a quick knockout, but
okay,
go for it.
Okay, so we should talk about Zebby Matthews. So recently promoted, promoted maybe 10 days ago now because he's made 2 starts at Double A.
May 9th was his debut.
It's just like an incredible jump he has made this season. He's rocking a 1.31 ERA. This is combined over Cedar Rapids and Double A. 2 starts in Double A now. 1.13 FIP. Struck out 35% of hitters. Has not walked a batter, and I think that's in roughly 30 innings. And
34 and a third.
34 and a third innings. Has not walked a single batter. Elite strike thrower, same as Andrew Morris, who's also been promoted and made his Double A debut today, and has just looked completely dominant at Double A also. So I think, we talked off and on big picture wise about like if one of these guys from this really awesome draft of pitchers, and by the way, Corey Lewis sadly hasn't thrown a pitch this year. He was a guy who's supposed to start at Double A.
Right.
He's still to come back. Looking forward to it. But if one of these guys kind of works out and takes a leap and becomes a contributor, that makes your draft a success.
Mm-hmm.
And Zebby Matthews is looking more and more as if he could be a major league caliber arm.
Okay, so how hard is he throwing?
With fastballs up to 97. So
6'5", 225.
Starter's frame.
This ain't some like back of the rotation crafty guy that nibbles.
Mm-hmm. Not at all.
If he's throwing 97 and not walking anybody, like 34 and a third without a single walk, that's insane. And 50, did I see 53 strikeout? 43 strikeouts?
Yep.
Okay, so we had this discussion at like 7:15 in the morning one morning. How high does he rank?
On like the Twins top prospects? So that's tough. And one quick note on the walk thing. I think there's potentially like his command and control is too good. And what I mean by that is like he's going to have to get more confident and more convicted in leaving the zone with 2 strikes. That's a story for another day. I think that Zebby Matthews is probably in the like 5 to 7, 6 to 8 range. Seems about right. So like what Jenkins, Lee, Erod. I think Festa is a clear number 4 at this point. And then you're in the mix with like Raya, Gabby Gonzalez, who is not a profile I particularly believe in. Hopefully I'm wrong. Keishel, I think, who we'll touch on in a second, but I think Zebby belongs right in that range after the top 4. So kind of anywhere from 5 to 8, 5 to 9. How about you?
No, I think that he's a top 5 prospect in the organization right now.
Woo!
Which is crazy based on what 7, 8 starts. But you just don't get to do this and not get recognized for it. And he's always been kind of a guy that's flown under the radar because of this draft class.
Mm-hmm.
And Corey Lewis has been the guy that, okay, yep, for sure. Connor Prelip was the guy that's like, oh, we can still dream on him.
Mm-hmm.
CJ Culpepper kind of comes out of nowhere. Andrew Morris has always been the forgotten guy, right? And then there's Zebby.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, if I were to rank right now, I put Zebby at 5 behind Festa and Gonzalez at 6. And I would feel pretty good about that.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild.
If he's throwing 97 and striking people out, and I mean this isn't some crafty lefty. That's
right. And like he's not like sitting 97, right? He's touching 97, but I do think, like, to your point, this is a legitimate pop. Like, when people say you never know when a guy's going to pop, this is what it looks like when a prospect pops and takes a legitimate, like, developmental leap. The Twins made some changes in his pitch mix this year. Essentially, they I think ditched his sweeper altogether, and then he was throwing a cutter, which they kind of split into 2 different pitches, and it seems to just be like the right complement of secondaries that plays well off of his fastball, and the proof is in the results, man. He's absolutely crushing it. 2 last guys I wanted to flag. One other guy I think is firmly in the mix for that kind of 5 to 9 range too. Luke Keeschel, I think maybe the most like well-rounded offensive profile in the Twin system at the moment. He's at high A, 323, 449, 515. That's good for a 968 OPS. He has a 15% K rate and a 15% walk rate. 83% contact. I mean, like, everything there is really good and significantly above average for his level. There's really not much to pick there yet, which is maybe you want that from a college guy that played in the Pac-12 for a year, them to crush at like high A, but I don't think that's a guarantee. And then Ricardo Olivar, 292, 409, 528, really similar looking line to Keeschel. 19% strikeout rate, 16% walk rate, 75% contact. He's another guy. It's just like a very polished offensive profile. Doesn't really have any holes in the game. Good power, good bat to ball, gets on base a ton. All those things you want to see.
Yeah, Keeschel can't be at Cedar Rapids for long.
Right? Not if he keeps this up.
I mean, the stats that you mentioned, and it's like, goodness gracious, that's not. And he's a college guy, so I think he gets to Double A probably sometime in late June.
Mm-hmm.
And if he ended the year at St. Paul,
that'd be wild.
But it wouldn't shock me, right? Olivar is a guy that you've talked about a lot more than I have. Is he doing much catching?
No, I think that dream has died.
So he's kind of an all in the bat type of dude.
Yeah, for sure.
And 22 at Cedar Rapids right now, and not putting up a super different line than last year. So I could see him. To me, he probably spends the year in Cedar Rapids. But yeah, another guy that when you can hit, and that's what the Twins love, right? Mm-hmm. Hit now, and we'll figure out the rest later. But certainly someone that has helped his standing as a prospect.
Dude, we gotta start doing like a minor league like hot sheet or something, so we don't have to talk about 50 prospects all at once next time. So note to ourselves, let's talk draft for like 10-15 minutes maybe. Yep. And then we can get out of here. So a couple ways we can go, man. We can either, there's 2 guys I really want to highlight. and throw a couple names out there for folks who might be less familiar, or we can play the game where we say who people would take via the consensus board if they were picking today. What you want to do first?
Here's what I want to do. I want to ask you just random questions for 5 minutes about the draft. Okay. Because I think there's some good stuff to talk about. Then I want you to give these spotlights 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes of the consensus board.
Okay.
So the first thing I want to ask you, and this is completely off script. Hagen Smith versus Chase Burns. Where are we today, and how high are they going to go?
You and I are in the place that we have been, which is that Hagen Smith is starting pitcher 1 in the draft. The consensus favors Burns. His kind of composite rank is 5.2. And he's only 1 spot ahead of Smith. Smith is 6.3. So they're player 5 and 6 on the consensus board right now. And I think that's fair. I think that's the range that we're going to see is somewhere in the 3 to 7 range. I would be shocked if we were past like 8 and there was one of them on the board still. So, I mean, they've both continued to absolutely shove. I think the things that you're weighing here are Hagen Smith is a lefty.
Mm-hmm.
People like that. Hagen Smith has also had Tommy John surgery before, and Chase Burns has not. Generally, evaluators, I think, like Hagen Smith's delivery a little better mechanically, and think there might be more kind of reworking to do with Chase Burns's. I'm not the person to kind of weigh in on that.
But Wake is the factory, man.
I mean, it's working quite well. We have to get Lucas on here to talk a little bit about the biomechanics of Chase Burns' delivery and what might need tweaking. But I think I'm still team Hagen Smith, but I don't begrudge anyone who puts Chase Burns as starting pitcher 1. And I think we're looking at the like 3 to 7 range, probably 3 to 6.
Who drafts 3rd?
Colorado.
If I'm Colorado, I draft Hagen Smith. And for all the reasons that I've said before, no pitcher wants to go there. This is your opportunity to get a dude, and I think that the top 2 guys are going to be the top 2 hitters.
Yep. We're getting into weird draft rumor season though, dude. Like crazy.
Okay, well that's my second question. Okay, because now we have these mock drafts coming out.
Yeah.
And maybe we touched on this last week, but I don't know that we did. Charlie Condon, who's my easy number 1, isn't going number 1. Okay, I want you to shed some light on that ridiculousness. I don't hate it because the Guardians are the ones making the pick. So I want them to not take the guy, right? I want them to mess this up. So shed some light on what's happening with the crazy draft rumors.
So we're talking wacky draft rumors. Like I've seen James Tibbs at number 1 to the Guardians this week, who's currently all the way down in 18th on the board, which would be a shocker. I think that Charlie, I agree with you that Charlie Condon would be my number 1 guy. I think that a lot of the wonder about picking Travis Bazzana is a little bit disrespectful to Bazzana's like profile and output, right? So he's like a maxed out guy. He's like 6 foot, 200 pounds. You're not going to get much more than what he is right now, but he is an elite hitter, man. Like he has like elite bat to ball skills. It's probably like 55 power at the big league level. It's playing an up the middle defensive position at second base, maybe center field. I think the way that you can sell that is by saying, I feel really confident about Travis Bazzana's floor being a 2 to 3.5 WAR player every single year. And while he might not have the like 7 WAR upside that Charlie Condon might have, you feel more confident that he's going to reach that floor. And if you're an organization like Cleveland, where you are going to rely on building most of your roster through drafting and developing guys, and make no mistake, Cleveland are an excellent
Mhm.
draft and develop team. There's a case to be made that, like, oh, if Bazana wants to take 750,000 less and go number one overall, we can grab an additional prep arm we feel really confident is going to be the next Gavin Williams, for example, because he was a college guy, but like, right?
Right.
I think that's the way that you sell it. I do think they're closer than people make them out to be. I mean, if you look at their composite ranking, Condon is 1.6, Bazana is 2. They're not a million miles away, and Condon is not a consensus number one guy.
Okay, I want to ask you this real quick question before we go to the next stop. And I just thought of this right now. Cleveland's winning the division right now, right?
Easily. Well, actually not, because Kansas City are bizarrely great
But
too.
does that change plans at all? Like, is there one of these guys that you could take and say they're close enough to the top, we can get them, we give them a little bit of time in the minor leagues, and they can help out in the pennant race?
I don't think so. I think they're like similarly advanced, and I think expecting either to help this season is a lot.
Okay, how about not either? How about we look at a different demographic?
What do you mean?
One of the pitchers we talked about.
Oh, one of the pitchers, I think different story, because I think you could throw Smith or Burns into a bullpen slot, but Cleveland already has an excellent bullpen, and you're really going to pin your draft calculus to 6 relief innings in September in a pennant race. If you're doing that, then my argument is that you did a poor job of constructing your roster. I think that both of these players, if everything goes perfect, could contribute in the 2025 season at some point.
Okay.
But I think 2024 is maybe a bridge too far.
Okay.
Like, we didn't even see Langford, Skeens, right? That's the path they followed, is 2025 at some point. So
Could have seen Skeens if the Pirates wanted to.
That's
They didn't
true.
need him to.
That's
Okay,
true.
so next question. You have a couple guys that you want to highlight on your board. Go for it.
Okay, real quick, too, guys. So I want to spotlight 2 college players that are chronically underranked, like by consensus. I'm just going to quickly whip through some numbers and talk about why I like each one of them. So the first is a second baseman from the University of Tennessee. His name is Christian Moore, and he has had a monumental breakout this year. He's hitting 388, 454, slugging 808. In 2023, hit 17 home runs. This year, he's hit 27 and counting. And by the way, he has the best road splits of any hitter in the SEC. Walked 24 times, struck out 37 in 54 games played. His 90th percentile exit velocity is around 112 miles per hour. Obviously, you can dial that back because college has hot bats. Doesn't chase too much, 23%, 77% contact. It's just really good. And he's 42nd by consensus on the board. And I would easily have him in my personal top 30. I would probably have him in my top somewhere in the 15 to 24 range.
Okay.
For me.
So, a couple things. He sounds like a Twins type draft pick, right? From a college that the Twins have scouted very heavily.
Jarrell Ortega,
Alex Solari,
mm-hmm.
Right? They've been there. So that's an interesting one. Okay, maybe notable. How about the next guy?
I did try and pick somewhat twinsy profiles because that's more fun. So my other one is even more further down the board, and I think even more of a miss at the moment. I think we're going to see some massive board corrections for this guy. So I want to get this out there before it happens. Ryan Waldschmidt. He's an outfielder from the University of Kentucky, SEC. So Kentucky have been a really, really good team this year. Kind of death by a thousand cuts type offensive approach. He's currently 85th by consensus. Waldschmidt is a transfer, I want to say out of the College of Charleston. Could be wrong. He's hitting 370, 500, slugging 653. It's less raw power, 11 home runs, but he has 23 steals, 31 walks, and 33 Ks in 48 games. So to your like K to ball on base ratio comment that you made earlier while we're going through the guys, the prospects, he checks out well there. 109 miles per hour for the 90th percentile exit velocity, barrels absolutely everything. 82% contact rate. His profile is like Travis Bazzana with more speed and a bit less pop. Doesn't really miss anything in the zone. He's a really great athlete, should have some kind of defensive versatility and be like a quality outfield defender, not a guy who's like hanging on for dear life. He's another guy who I would put in my top 30. I would have him in the first round. I think the production has been the back end of the first round, but the first round and at the latest in Comp A. So really curious to see if we get board corrections for those guys. We'll be due for another kind of batch of boards coming in the next 10 days or so. And Christian Moore and Ryan Waldschmidt are guys who you can actually watch in the SEC tournament, which is taking place right now. So check them out if you get a chance.
And always heavily attended by scouts of
yeah.
Every team. Okay, so the last part on here, if we did mock drafts by consensus board, which you can do on the sites, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is everybody taking?
All right, I'll quickly run through the guys for each team, and you can tell me if that kind of sits well with you, if you like a guy, if you don't like a guy, if you like the balance of kind of the picks, right? So we'll do Cubs first because they have the saddest collection of picks and money, but they're the richest. So, you know. So right now, by consensus, Cubs will be taking William Schmidt at 14th overall, right-handed prep pitcher out of Louisiana, maybe the best prep arm in the class. We talked about him quite a bit. They would be taking a like speedy, athletic prep outfielder, Braylon Payne. I want to say he's out of Texas at 54th overall. Curious for your thoughts on that, especially given the Cubs like lack of like combo of picks and money. You know, feels like pretty prep heavy.
Yeah, I don't foresee them doing that, but after what I would consider a pretty low upside draft of last year, you could certainly take some upside this year. Payne is 17, so depending on how teams view age, right? That's someone that'll be higher on boards if that's something that fits into their formula. If the Cubs were to take the highest rated prep pitcher, which again, I don't necessarily see them doing, but I don't think that would be a terrible pick given what they have. They hit with Horton, who had thrown not a ton in college. So I don't necessarily see that for the Cubs, but if that's what a team gets, making those two types of selections, that's a draft that you're not going to hate because there's certainly upside. But obviously there's the chance that you just miss wildly on both of them. So I can see a team doing that. I just don't necessarily think it would be the Cubs.
I agree. All right. How about the Brewers? I feel like maybe with the Brewers and the Twins, we're like maybe a little closer to what an actual haul might look like. So 3 picks to the Brewers through the top 60. Vance Honeycutt at 17, outfielder out of North Carolina, tremendous athlete, like defense, speed. You're going to get value there from the center field profile. Can he hit? Who knows? At 34, left-handed prep pitcher Cash Mayfield out of Oklahoma. Now, he is sneaking up as a guy that is starting to be viewed as kind of a consensus first-round arm. And while I don't think he's going to overtake Schmidt on the board, there's definitely people that prefer him as a profile. He is going to be a really interesting one to track. I do think he's going to go in the first round or Comp A at the latest. And then 57th for the Brewers by consensus right now is a really interesting profile. It's another hitter from Tennessee. His name is Blake Burke. Some of the best power in the entire draft class. A draft class, which to be fair is full of power hitting college guys. Left-handed hitter. Um, he's just taking a step forward in everything offensively. The bummer is it's kind of like a first base defensive profile, but he is going to mash if his performance is in line with what he's done in college. So thoughts on the Brewers route of like college hitter, prep pitcher, college hitter.
Yeah, I mean that's totally believable, right? That's what they kind of did last year.
Mm-hmm.
Honeycutt is going to be Honeycutt. I think is a guy that's going to have a pretty wide range.
Agree, 100%.
Somebody is going to really like him, and there's going to be, in my opinion, a lot of teams that are like, we're not on Honeycutt.
Mm-hmm.
But there's enough to like that he could go early. But there's enough question marks that he could totally slide. I could see him landing with the Brewers because of his profile. Mayfield, like any prep pitcher, makes a whole bunch of sense for the Brewers or any team in that area. They did it with North last year, almost in the exact same spot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard demographic to peg because so much of where they go has to do with their demands, right?
Yep, for sure.
I don't know that Burke is the name at 57 because I mean, they're not going to draft first baseman. It feels like they're going to draft third baseman that can't stay at third base and then move over. That has some
Sure.
right. I mean that to me is just kind of their theme. But maybe they surprise me. I would if that was the Brewers draft after 3 picks, I would say, yeah, I like that for the Brewers.
Yep, I agree. And to your point on Honeycutt, here's his range of rankings on the board. His highest is 10th. His lowest is 40. And
Who's 40? Keith Law?
we don't. No, someone I would rather not say is has him 40. You don't see that type of range with guys who were in the 1-1 conversation preseason too often. So I do think that speaks to the variance that you're talking about. All right, Twins. I'm going to cheat on the Twins, and here's why. Their pick at 21 would be Caleb Lomavita, but their pick at 33 was also a catcher by consensus.
Okay.
So I'm going to cheat and give them the 20th guy. So Twins at 21, Slade Caldwell, prep outfielder, kind of Jet Williams profile of like fire hydrant, like speed, play with your hair on fire guy. 33, Jacob Cozart, left-handed hitting catcher out of North Carolina State. One of the better defensive catchers in the draft, but has had a really solid year on offense too. And then at 60, David Shields, who is a guy we have not talked about a ton, but he is a prep pitcher out of Illinois. He is one of just this like slew of guys. There's like 15 guys between 35 and 60 that kind of fall under the bucket of prep pitcher with good velo and like a solid like platform of like stuff and pitching arsenal. So prep outfielder, college catcher, prep pitcher for the Twins.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's going to go hitter, probably prep pitcher, probably hitter, pitcher for the rest of the draft. But I don't, if there's a catcher that they really like and they want to go that way in the comp round and then throw a dart at a pitcher in the second round, I don't think there's anything wrong with that approach. Caldwell is someone that I that just strikes me as a Twins type, not necessarily a Twins type pick, but someone that the Twins, that the scouting department would like. Not something that we've talked a ton about, but I could see that being a profile that they would like, and it's going to be time to take a catcher soon, and this might be the draft to do it. And then whenever you say prep pitcher, I'm like, okay, yep, let's give that a shot and see how that goes. So
for sure,
I would dig that draft. When you're drafting and outside the top 20, you're not going to necessarily get the top prospects, but Slade Caldwell for me would be one of the guys that I would prefer over the other options
Agreed.
that would be available.
Agreed. I'm with it. All right. We're coming up on 120, so we're going to wrap this up. Thank you guys for taking time to check out the show. We will be back next week, hopefully on Wednesday, because I believe that avoids the Timberwolves Western Conference Finals schedule. So we'll be back with another episode next week. We will check in with some more minor league guys and have hopefully another draft update by then. Until then, thank you guys for checking out the show, and go Wolves.